Good morning and welcome back to the class. So we have studied about few important chapters on understanding why we are the way we are. Yes, we studied about the DNA, we studied about how this DNA is processed, how this DNA gets converted into RNA, RNA into proteins, and studied about the entire central dogma in detail and try to understand how this has an impact on our existence. But see, when we are talking about biology as a science, we are not happy if we just know how we are today. Why are we the way we are? You can go to the scientific explanation. At the same time, we would also like to find out how were our ancestors. And when I say ancestors, it's not just few generations back. We are talking about so many millions of years ago. What was the condition and how life originated? And not only this, we also would like to try to find out how will be humans existing, say, after thousands of years. How are we? So this is some kind of question which of course I cannot do it right now, but I would like to travel back and I would also like to travel forth and try to see how we are and how we will be and how we were, something like how you see in a movie. So we would like to see ourselves on how we are. Now that part of biology where we talk about the history of various life forms on earth is what we call as a branch of biology called as evolutionary biology. Okay, so in this entire chapter we are trying to talk about this particular branch of biology which is called as evolutionary biology. So what exactly is evolution? Okay, first thing, why did life originate only on earth? Is there life anywhere else on this universe? Maybe we do not know, but we would like to have a kind of small discussion on some of the parameters that helps to have life on this planet. Okay, then after this we also talk about the origin of life, some of the various theories that are proposed to tell us how there are so many plants, so many animals, so many microorganisms, what are the theories that are proposed and how evolution of life forms actually took place on this planet. And then we also are talking about science, and when we are talking about science, the first thing that we always want is some kind of proof. So the next topic that we would also consider talking and discussing in this chapter is talking about some of the evidences for evolution. Okay, then we talk about one concept which is called as the adaptive radiation. Then we'll talk about the biological evolution, the types of evolution, the mechanism of how this evolution actually takes place. And then we talk about Hardy-Weinberg law. It's a very nice principle which talks about evolution. We will be learning about that. And then we talk about how man has evolved. So these are some of the topics that we would be covering in this entire chapter, interesting chapter, which is called as evolution. Okay, if you just look at any plant or you look at any other animal, you see that the plants and the animals are not formed in just 1 year. I take a seed, I put it in the soil, you see that a plant comes out of it. Yes, the plant is coming out of that seed, but for the plant to have developed, to have the same kind of genetic mechanism which we discussed in the last class, it is not a one generation effort. It's an effort which has taken millions of years, millions and millions of years. And when we are discussing about these small minute changes that has happened, be it in plants or in animals, we call that as evolution. Okay, one thing which we need to remember is that evolution is not specific only for plants or for the animals. It is evolution is seen in all the spheres. Say we see evolution of stars, evolution of earth. In fact, we also talk about evolution of universe. Okay, so many times what we do is we kind of link our evolution with that of evolution of earth, and we also talk about many such forms of life, the biodiversity, and with all this we talk about the evolution of the universe. So basically when we are talking about evolution of life, we are trying to find out something that is very closely related to the evolution of universe. So, with this background, let us just start studying about the first topic, which is called as origin of life. So, we know what life is. We have defined what life is last year. But just to give you one complete definition, we said that anything that is growing irreversibly and grows in size, and all of them has some kind of metabolic actions, reactions, activities taking place inside, we call that as life. So when we are talking about origin of life, we are trying to find out where, when and how this life really started. Okay, you see that when we have objects, I see one table here right in front of me. Okay, I'm seeing that right now, but when I see a star, I am not seeing the star right now. The star that I am seeing is actually so many years old. Now why is that? That is because the light takes a long time to travel from that star to my eyes, right? Now similarly, if I am talking about the origin of life, it is something which has happened very long time back, so many millions of years ago. And if I want to find out, you see that it is close to around 20 billion years old. And now I would like to know how exactly life started on this planet. Okay. Now before even life started, we should know how this planet came into existence. Okay. Now if we are talking about how this has happened, we consider that our universe is considered to be very old, which is 20 billion years old. Now in this universe we have large number of galaxies, okay, and each galaxy has so many stars and so many gases and so much of dust. And when you talk about this, you see that all these are in continuous motion. We say that the universe is moving, right, and it is expanding as well. Now in this expanding universe, if you just consider Earth, it's like a small dust particle on this planet. Yes, in this huge universe, Earth is a very small planet. Now there is one theory which I am sure you would be aware of, which is called as the Big Bang theory. Now Big Bang theory helps us to kind of understand how there was origin of universe. Okay, something like it was the entire universe was very small speck, but there was a huge explosion, and that was so huge that from that time the small speck of universe started expanding, and it started expanding so much that there were observable changes physically. So the entire universe temperature came down, and after some time we could see that there is hydrogen and helium, and these gases condensed under gravitation, and when they condensed when they condensed, there was formation of galaxies, and these galaxies are comprising our understanding of the present day universe, right? So in this galaxies, we have one such galaxy which is called as the Milky Way galaxy, and we consider that you know, Earth was formed sometime around 4.5 billion years ago. BYA is billion years ago. So 4.5 billion years ago, there was the formation of Earth. Now, initially, our Earth was like there was no atmosphere. Uh, Water vapor was there, methane was there, ammonia was there, carbon dioxide was there, and these were comprising our Earth. Okay. Uh, then after a very long time, you see that there was this UV rays coming from the sun, which was falling on the Earth's surface, and that broke down this water into hydrogen and oxygen. Now we know very well that hydrogen is a lighter gas, it escaped the Earth's atmosphere, whereas oxygen with ammonia and with methane, they were all there in the Earth's atmosphere, and finally it formed water, right? Uh, and almost at the same time, we see around 4.5 billion years ago, there was formation of ozone layer also. Now this ozone layer cooled after some time. It was cooled, and that water vapor that was getting evaporated came back again to this earth, fell as rain, and there were a lot of depressions on this earth. So there was creation of oceans and seas and all of them. So this is how our present earth was formed. So from 4.5 billion years to almost till 3.5 billion years ago, we could see that there was formation of earth itself. There was a lot of changes in the earth's atmosphere. So this methane, carbon dioxide, the UV rays, the high temperature, all this paved the way for the formation of the current earth. And finally, what was very important for life to originate is the formation of water, which also happened somewhere around 300 billion years, 3 billion years ago, where this water, after the ozone layer was formed, the water came down onto the earth's surface as rain. Now this happened till around 3 to 4 billion years back. Now comes the next question. Now earth is ready. Now where did life come from? Now there are so many theories to tell how this life came from. Many people we think that life is not something that originated on earth. We especially Greek philosophers think that life on this planet came from some kind of external source, and this external source could be any other planet, or it could be any other galaxy, or it can be any other gases that came and hit earth during the formation of earth around 4 billion years ago. So they think that some kind of dust fell on this earth, and that is called as the dust, which is called as the spores. Okay, this external sources gave some kind of spores which were planted on this earth, and this spores started growing, taking water, taking environment from the earth, started growing and started evolving later. Now this theory is what we call as panspermia. What do we call this as? We call this theory as the panspermia. Okay, even now many of us, we believe that it might be because of panspermia that life has originated on this planet. Okay, but again, you know what, we cannot be completely be believing this. So people then gave one more explanation of something that was called as abiogenesis theory. Abiogenesis theory, where they said that you take any non-living matter, and that non-living matter should be decaying and rotting. Says it can be the dead organism, or it can be straw, it can be mud, or it can be that rugs. All this theory was all this theory was based on the fact that any decaying and rotting matter would give rise to life. And thus when the earth was started getting decaying because of the presence of water, then there was lot of decaying that led to the formation of life. Now this theory, which is called as the abiogenesis theory, is also called as spontaneous. So it's also called as the spontaneous generation theory. It is also called as the spontaneous generation theory. But you know, many people agree to this. In fact, lots of scientists were accepting this. In fact, they gave recipe for making rats, recipe for making getting rats, recipes for making snakes and all that. So they used to tell, if the room is dark and you keep some hay, cover it with a wet rug and keep it incubating for some time, you see that it will give rise to rats. Now this was the recipe for getting rats on this planet. Similarly, there were some recipes for getting snakes, some recipe for getting birds' eggs, and so on. However, certain experiments was kind of disproved this spontaneous genesis, and there was a new theory which was proposed called as the biogenesis theory. This was the experiments that were done by Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur did this very famous swan neck experiments, and when he did the swan neck experiments, he showed that life comes only from some kind of life that is already there, and spontaneous generation was very easily dismissed. Okay, now Louis Pasteur proved that life comes from life, but how did life come in the first place? Now that could not be explained by the abiogenesis theory or even the biogenesis theory. So to explain about this particular concept, just to have a theory, see, no one can actually go back 4.5 billion years ago and find out how exactly our earth was and try to find out. We cannot do that, but we can think of some of the possibilities that would have happened, and we come up with our own theories. Now similarly, there was one very famous theory that was proposed. Now that was proposed by two great scientists. The first one was Oparin. He was from Russia. Then we have Haldane, who is from England. So these two scientists, Oparin of Russia, Haldane of England, he proposed that the life form, first life form, would have come from non-living organisms. Okay, or I would not say non-living organisms, I would say non-living molecules. You know, I was telling you about how Earth was formed from this 4.5 billion years ago. There was ammonia, then there was carbon dioxide, then there was oxygen and also methane. Now some of these compounds came together and they formed the first important molecules like say RNA or like proteins. Okay, and this was something that was very, very important, and you see that these chemicals were formed first. Okay, please note, at the same time almost there was also some changes happening here. I was telling you that oxygen was formed, water was formed and all this. Now this kind of environment which was there from 4.5 billion years ago was different from the one that we see at around 3 to 2.5 billion years. So here it was a very high temperature, volcanic storms were there, and the environment was having methane gas, ammonia gas, and so on. Whereas here by around 3.5 million years ago, the temperature was less because there was rain that was formed, and also you could see some kind of organic compounds, like from CH4 water was formed, CH4, NH3 and oxygen, water was formed, and all this led to the formation of various types of chemicals, and this is what we call as the chemical evolution. This is what we call as the chemical evolution. Now this was proposed by the scientists Oparin and Haldane. But this was too much like a theory, and there had to be some kind of proof for what it, whether it is right or wrong. And in 1953, okay, in 1953, there was one more scientist by name Miller. Okay, he kind of made a similar condition in the laboratory and saw what would happen. Okay, so I hope you can see this picture now. Yeah, so he did or he simulated a similar environment here. You could see that there was one area here which has an environment very much similar to the previous Earth, somewhere around 4.5 billion years ago. There was methane gas, ammonia gas, water, hydrogen, and then there was also the temperature that was maintained somewhere close to 800 degrees centigrade, and there was observation of various amino acids that is happening in this region. So when electric spark was given, which happened during lightning and thundering, a long time back in the initial formation of Earth, then the temperature rose, and this electric spark discharge that was here helped in the formation of the chemical evolution, as Oparin and Haldane suggested. There was RNA formation, there was proteins formation, there were amino acids that were formed, and all this was something that kind of helped us to know if Oparin and Haldane's theory was right. Okay. Also, there were many other such experiments that were carried out. They observed that there can be nitrogenous bases, there can be formation of certain pigments, certain fats, certain sugars, and all this is something that is giving rise to the chemical evolution in the first place. Now this was something that was observed initially. Okay, but we had one more theory, and that was, if we take the content of all these chemicals that were formed and try to find out from where exactly it's coming from, they found out that the meteorite content also has a similar chemical processes. Okay, this is how we don't know whether it's coming from a meteorite or whether there is some kind of chemical evolution that is happening like this. Okay, but whatever said and done, we see that there is some kind of theory that is proposed. The first theory is the chemical evolution theory, which was pretty much proved by the Miller's experiment. And also we have one more theory where we checked the meteorite content and we try to find out if our cells has some kind of meteorite content. Yes, it has. So frankly speaking, we are still not very sure of how exactly there might be life. And please look at this life, these chemical compounds which are formed here are so well, I would say, manufactured. I don't know by whom. This well manufactured chemicals are self-replicating. Yes, they are self-replicating, they can divide on their own. If you want, you can say that RNA can give rise to protein, and RNA can be stored in the form of DNA, which we have already seen. and you see that there is lot of some kind of very specific mechanism for the formation and working of all these forms. And not only all this self-replication, you also see that there are so many metabolic activities happening inside the cell. Yes, there are so many metabolic activities that are happening inside the cell, and because of so many activities happening, you really cannot say whether just one electric spark, though forms RNA and proteins, how exactly it is controlling all these metabolic activities. Nevertheless, we have good amount of theories to tell us about how these RNAs are formed, how these proteins are formed, how these polysaccharides are formed, and maybe we can also think about some of the theories based on which we can think of some of the metabolic activities that would be controlled by something else. In fact, with all these things, what we found out, what we can kind of conclude ourselves is that initially there are no cells, initially there are no multicellular organisms, but what we see is a group of all these chemicals together, put together. And this was initially called as co-asservatives. We call them as the co-asservatives. Now, this co-asservatives are just a kind of, you can think of a bag with all the chemicals put together. And finally, you see that this co-asservatives, all these chemicals put together, started some kind of metabolic activities and finally gave rise to a single-celled organism. So, this co-asservatives gave rise to a single-celled organisms, and we still strongly believe that this single-celled organisms that are formed here are completely in water only, is completely inside the water. Now, from this single-celled organism, there was life, which became a multicellular organism which tried to adapt itself from water to land, land on to tree, and so on. And that is how the process of formation of making many different types of organisms that we see around started. Okay. So though we talk about how this whole thing started, though we talk about Oparin Haldane theory and Miller's experiment, we can only tell it as a theory, but we will not be able to tell it as a fact. That is because we still do not have enough proof for what exactly happened 4.5 billion years ago, right? So, with this, there was origin of life, and now comes evolution of life. So, once we know how life came into existence, or we assume that it has come into existence this way, we will talk about the next topic, which is evolution of life forms. Now, what is it that we are going to learn in evolution of life forms? Now, again, talking about evolution, we are not very sure of this exactly has happened, or each one of us have our own theories to talk about how evolution of life has happened. Okay. Now, the first thing that comes to our mind is talking about or looking at various religious literature. Okay, so there are so many types of religious books that we have, and each one of us, we have a very firm faith in our religion, and according to that we have three different types of connotations. One is that all the living organisms are created as such. When we say as such, it's like, a human is created as a human, a butterfly is created as a butterfly, a moth is created as a moth, and so on. So this is one theory which many people, many religions also think about it. Think about religion or evolution of life. But there is one more connotation which says that the diversity is always the same. Okay, the second connotation is diversity is always the same. Okay, so when the life started during creation, let us say, so from that time, whatever animals, whatever plants were there, they are still there, and even now they are still there. Even in the future, they would also be there. So this is one more idea. Okay, and don't know how far it is true. Let us not discuss about that part with respect to religion right now. And the third part is where you say that Earth is around 4,000 years old. So this is one more theory. Okay, now we cannot rule out or take in any of these theory because each one of them is linked to religion. Okay, but all these beliefs which are completely inherent, they were all challenged sometime during 19th century, and when they were challenged, each one of them gave their own scientific explanations. However, contribution of Charles Darwin in this regard is something which has to be very well appreciated. I'm sure you know about the story of Charles Darwin. He was observant, I would say. He was observant who sailed the ship called HMS Beagle around the world, and since he was an observant, he was looking at the flora, the fauna in various islands, and concluded that all the existing living forms, they share similarities. Okay, all these existing living forms, they share their similarities. Yes, not completely, but at least to some degree. Okay, and he also suggested that maybe all these organisms have a single ancestor so many million years ago. So from one single ancestor, there can be formation of so many different types of plants as well as animals. So this was one theory which Charles Darwin proposed by his extensive work with respect to animals as well as plants on his voyage in Beagle. Okay, and please note that he was kind of very clear by telling that those ancestors, may not be even present now. It might have lost its appearance. Okay, so as a new organism comes, it's not that the old type of organism also exists all the time. It can exist or it might have been lost. Like, I don't know if you know this, in Kannada we say Manganinda Manava. So we have come from or evolved from monkeys. Now if that is the case, why are monkeys still there? Because we say that monkeys, there are few monkeys which did not want to become a human, they did not try to become a human, and those traits of humans are still absent in those monkeys. whereas humans became humans. So there is a gradual evolution of life forms. So this was proposed by Charles Darwin. Okay, uh, but he also mentioned that there are something called as inbuilt characteristics. Uh, this characteristics are something which is part of me and helps me to survive better. Okay, so these are something that I would call as innate characteristics. Say for example, if you take me and put me in Arctic region, I would not be able to survive. Yeah, as of now I can take good clothes and stay, I can just build a igloo and stay there. But naturally if you ask, I will not be able to stay because I don't have enough modifications in my body. They do not help me to survive in that condition. Okay, I will not be able to consume its food, I will not be able to tolerate the temperature, I would not be able to tolerate the cold, wind and all of them. And therefore, over a period of time, you see that the animals which have a better survival stamina, better innate characteristics like a white polar bear, that has a better chances to survive than humans. So this way you see, as the environment changes, there are some innate changes that an organism makes, and any organism that makes these innate changes has a better ability to survive. It has a better ability to, outbreed those organisms, the organisms which does not change, and hence one particular population of organisms increase. So this is something which again Charles Darwin proposed. Okay, so we talk about, he talks about the innate characteristics. The first one is the innate characteristics. Then he also talks about how they can kind of outbreed. That is the second one. And the third one, which he also talks, is about the fitness. If a population, or I would say if a species has to survive, it has to be fit. When I say fit, it is not whether I can fight with my fellow beings. It's not that kind of fitness. Here, Charles Darwin talks more on a reproductive fitness. Okay, he talks about the reproductive fitness. So, who is fit, who is able to conceive, and who is able to deliver more, who is able to outbreed. Now, those are the fitness which Charles Darwin talks. Now, any organism which has the ability to reproduce well and increase in number, give out more progeny than others, has a higher ability to survive, and they are finally, you see, they are selected by nature, and this he called as natural selection. So he said that nature has a very important role to play to select which species survives. And what is the criteria for nature to select? One is it checks about its reproductive ability. It talks about how well it can outbreed the other organisms, and then it will also talk about some of the innate traits, innate characteristics which can change or which cannot change, how fast it can change, so on and so forth, such that they are able to adapt itself for the environment better. Okay, so this is what is the mechanism involved in various types of life forms. So just to give you one example, we are all staying in a tropical region. Now I would go to Antarctica. I know the problems there already. So what I would do is I would make all the mechanisms, all the innate traits such that I can still withstand the temperature we humans have the higher ability to outbreed all the other organisms like panda, or not panda, sorry, polar bear, and you see that over a period of time, humans will be more than the polar bear. So that way nature selects the organism which has the ability to survive in one particular region. So this was a theory that was proposed by Charles Darwin. Okay, there was this another scientist. I don't know if you know about it. Uh, heard of the scientist by name Alfred Wallace? Now he was also a naturalist. Uh, he worked with archipelago, uh, very much like Charles Darwin, and he also had come to a similar thing, a similar kind of conclusions. Okay, in fact, Wallace also said that over a uh, period of time which could be close to around many years, there would be no food to eat, and there might be death of most of the species because of the lack of food. So that was also told. Anyway, so he said that he had also come under the same conclusions as fitness and natural selection playing a very important role. Then he also had said that all the organisms that we see here today, they have some kind of similarities, and they all share common ancestors. Okay, now this was what was observed by Alfred Wallace also. Okay, and have you heard of geological history of Earth? I would want you people to read this particular aspect, which is called as the geological history of Earth. Okay, now if you consider the geological history of Earth and the biological history of Earth, you see that there is lot of correlation between these two. As the Earth changes, there is change in biological history as well. Change of Earth and environment, you see change in biological environment also. So this way you see that there is lot of correlation between the geological Earth and the biological Earth. Okay, so with all these conclusions, what we can say is that Earth is not just 4,000 years old, it's many thousands of years old, billions of years old, and this place of Earth is constantly changing from the day it is formed. You see that there was some kind of changes happening in the Earth's atmosphere, Earth's core, Earth's crust, and not only all this, this has led to the formation of so many organisms, and all these organisms are also not stagnant, they are all changing better to suit the changing world, changing Earth, and also the changing universe. Okay, so this way you see that we discuss about the evolution of various life forms. Yes, Darwin's role and Darwin's contribution is something that is very important. But whatever said and done, in science, till I have some kind of very strong, profound, I would say, understanding, it would not be right for us to say that this is how it has happened. So we want to have a proof for evolution, how this evolution has really happened, and how exactly are there any kind of similarities between the organisms that we see now, and can we find something else from the endangered organisms and extinct organisms. So this study is what is being done, and right now we need to discuss about the evidences for evolution, and that we would do in our next class. So I hope you have understood all these aspects. So in our next class we would discuss the third part of understanding evolution, which is talking about evidence required, evidences used to prove about evolution, right? Okay, so I hope you do not have any doubts. Any doubts, make a note. We will discuss in the next class. See you then.